Yo guys, what is good? Welcome back on the Uncle Sharma channel. Here we are today for a special scout report episode. Usually I do these episodes by myself. I usually, get some clips, get some stats, do, all kind of wizardry to kind of whip up some sort of scout report myself. But I think that the goalkeeper position, in my opinion, is the hardest to kind of scout because you can't really gauge a goalkeeper, in my opinion, without watching them game in, game out, full 90 minutes. And that's why today I'm not doing it by myself. I've got a perfect person to, take us through Anatoliy Trubin, who is one of the hot rumors at the moment linked with Inter. Of course, we know, unfortunately, ONANA is potentially leaving our club Inter soon to go to Man United. And Anatoliy Trubin, the Shakhtar Donetsk goalkeeper, young Ukrainian, is linked to us. And to talk about it all with me, I have today Andrew Todos from at Zoria Londonsk. He is a Ukrainian football expert. And thank you very much for joining us, Andrew.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting a bit about Trubin. Over the past, year or so, I've been chatting a lot about the likes of Mudryk and other players, but nice to actually get a bit of focus on a goalkeeper who I think over the past few years, Inter fans have been pretty well versed in him and Shakhtar as well. So we'll see what the next few sort of half an hour or so brings.
Yeah, no, it really is. Like, as soon as you say Trubin to us Inter fans, it's like, oh, because I think we faced Shakhtar 4 times in the Champions League and we drew all 4 times to them every single time. I think they were all 0-0 up until the last time round we faced them when we finally started to beat them. But yeah, quickly, just about your your credentials, who you are, like why I've invited you to the channel. Just give people a quick overview of what you do, Andrew.
Sure. So I'm a British Ukrainian sports journalist, specialise in Ukrainian sort of sports, in particular football. Been sort of running the page Zoria Londonsk on Twitter, Instagram. Have a website and sort of been writing articles and the likes and covering Ukrainian football for the past 5 years. And before that, in a sort of a less professional capacity, sort of following Ukrainian football for my life. So, I've just recently come back from the under 21 Euros, so got a good look in on Trubin sort of again. Been to Ukraine a number of times this season in particular.
Wow.
Watched a fair amount of Shakhtar games on my Footballogy app. It said that I saw Shakhtar the most times this season out of any other team, apparently. And so I think there's plenty to talk about with regards to him. And for the past sort of 3 years or so, also run a sort of an English language podcast about Ukrainian football, and you can sort of find links to that on my Twitter page.
Fantastic. Yeah, make sure you guys check him out because I recently found him through Twitter, and it's really recommended follow. And yeah, your accreditation is even better than I thought, man. You're literally the perfect person to speak about it all. So let's get straight into it. Trubin, I'll go with a big question. Is he ready for a team like Inter?
To be honest, I think he is. He's been the sort of number one at Shakhtar now for the past 3 seasons, per se. You can probably say 2.5 because when the full-scale invasion began last year, there was only half a season. But he was playing in a lot of friendlies. He sort of was coming up for the national team and that kind of stuff. So he's only 22 next month in August. Wow. But he's already, been the number one sort of goalkeeper for Shakhtar for those past 3 years because Andrew Katov, that I'm sure most of the footballing world knows, the veteran, he's not been sort of anywhere near sort of the top level for a number of years now. He's been a lot young. He's been a lot older, of course. He's been given a lot more time on the bench, and he's actually officially retired at the start of this season. So he's like completely out of the game now. So Trubin, he's expected to leave, of course. at some point soon. But if he was to stay, he'd certainly be the number one sort of indefinitely. And the same can be said for the national team. Literally, this past international break, where he was, where Ukraine were playing against the likes of North Macedonia, Malta, and Germany in a friendly as well. He started all three of those games, and also against England back in March. So he seems to be the number one goalkeeper in Ukraine, and also the number one goalkeeping prospect, because he's still so young. And I feel that at this moment in time, Shakhtar have got a new manager. I feel that they're going to be in a bit of a transition period after sort of the heroics that they did in last year's Champions League, where I think they surprised a lot of people with how well they did. Now they've got no Mudryk. They might lose a few other key players. It might be a bit more difficult for them in sort of European football. So I feel that if Trubin needs a move, I think this summer in particular, with 1 year left on his contract, to try and get that next step of development up, where he's not going to be playing kind of weak against relatively weak sides, where he can keep relatively good, easy clean sheets if needed, but he's going to be challenged a lot more. I know that there's a lot of questions about whether he's ready to step up straight away to be a starter at Inter. Maybe might need a season to adapt just to a new league, to new forwards, to new football, new coach as well, a new language, new culture, etc. But I'm sure that even if he sort of has a bit part to play in his first season, if he is to move to Inter, he will have, I think he's more than ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the current rumors are that, Inter are looking at Trubin, and then alongside him is, looking at like a more experienced profile. The names are Jan Sommer, Keylor Navas. I've even saw Hugo Lloris today, which I hope that doesn't happen. What do you think that would be the ideal scenario, right? To kind of help him, bring him through, take him under his wing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would be quite good for him, to be honest, if he had a more experienced goalkeeper with him. Because I've been reading about Handanovic, he might be on his way out as well. And he's obviously not been at the top of his game for a number of years as well. No. So what you'd want is someone like maybe a Sommer, for example, who has been relatively still quite high level and can sort of create that competitiveness for Trubin, who technically hasn't really had much of it for the past sort of 2-3 seasons, as I've mentioned, because he's been sort of a stalwart. I think Pyatov had a few matches in and out here and there, but ultimately the managers have all preferred Trubin, especially with this kind of football that they want to play, which is sort of passing out the back, build up play from there. And
so has that continued on? Because I know obviously the Zerbi brought that in originally. So is that continued? So you still play out from the back mostly?
Yeah, Shakhtar certainly do. And something that has started more recently is the national team has started to do that as well. So literally this past international break for the seniors and the under-21s, it's essentially been literally no long goal kicks at all. Wow. More or less. It's literally just passing the ball straight to, a centre-back who's sort of already within the penalty area, and then sort of building it up from there, and then passing it, receiving a lot of passes back, when there's a bit of pressure going on, and then starting those moves again. So it's something that he has been able to introduce into his game and work on. And I feel that with every sort of match that he does play in that sort of style of play, he's improving with that. The one thing I feel that he does need, though, to make that next step in that development is to play with better players around him, because under 21s, even at Ukraine, there is sometimes maybe a bit of a quality in that sort of passing of the centre backs or even full backs that might need just a slight improvement. And then once he has got that more, I guess, telepathic understanding with those teammates, then, you know, that will improve. And you can only do that, obviously, on the training ground, playing games and the likes. So the more that continues, hopefully the better he becomes.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Of course, yeah, you need better
Yeah, and
teammates.
actually, something I want to add on to that is that
Mhm.
the Ukrainian Premier League, there's not really much of a press for
Okay.
Shakhtar, for example. They are the better or the best team in the league, and they're playing against teams that aren't very intense. They don't bring or sort of impose a lot of pressure on them. Hence why when they're playing sort of when he's playing for the national team, the under-21s, in the Champions League, in the Europa League, that's when he gets the proper experience per se, to sort of get that under his belt. And of course, once he moves to a top 5 league, to Serie A, for example, that's where I feel that he can properly start building on that and getting a lot more consistent sort of quality of opposition.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And like to, you know, continue on to that topic, I'm gonna just share some of the questions that today. Thank you everyone that answered the Twitter post today. There was a lot more questions than I expected today. Very, very interactive from everyone. And the main question, yeah, like I even had to point out, don't worry guys, we will talk about his ball playing ability, because the keeper that's leaving Inter right now, ONANA, it's probably, you know, he's up there for me. I think he's even better than Edison and Allison in terms of ball playing ability. With goal shot stopping, I think we are slightly overrating him a little bit now as Inter fans. I think we're like taking it a little bit too far. But you know, he is a complete package. But his ball playing ability is what we know he's really, really good at, and we're gonna miss. So you've already spoke about it a little bit. In terms of his passing, what would you say? Is he, because obviously Onana is kind of, he's brought up with his Barca school, that was his, you know, upbringing, so he's got it like almost within him naturally. With Trubin, the clips I'm watching is like, as you said, he's not actually too bad, but he looks quite, you know, clunky a little bit in terms of his style. He is a big boy. He's like what, 2 meters tall, so it doesn't look easy on the eye. But how would you judge his short passing, mid range, and like long range passing?
To be honest, I feel that his short range passing is pretty solid, as long as he's got his decision making with regards to sort of passing and finding the right gaps. It all depends also on his sort of teammates, because, like I said, I was at the under-21 Euros. Some of his teammates, I feel, are slightly less, I guess, of a high quality level in that respect. So it was a bit of sort of a heart and mouth scenarios at some points, but I feel that that's less to do with him and more to do with sort of who's trying to receive them, and sort of some of the defenders trying to pass back to him and sort of miskicking it or not getting it enough. And it's like, bloody hell, this is sort of making a bit of extra work for Trubin himself. However, I feel that he is someone that is sort of growing in confidence with that every time. He's quite composed as well on the ball.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be sort of like proper shaky. He might be a bit clunky, like you say, but I feel that that's just more to do with the fact that he probably doesn't play in such a high intensity league so far. So he just needs to sort of add a bit of that sharpness to his game, where usually, you know, he's got lots of time, he's got lots of space to give it a think and to sort of make that pass when he needs to. But now he's sort of had a few of those experiences where he needs to do a lot more quickly, and I feel that once he makes the next step, and with a bit more better coaching as well, he should be able to develop that part of his game a lot better. Mid-range too, I think he's not too bad. He can pick out someone sort of like a defensive midfielder out in midfield, who's open, and he's not bad with an eye for the pass. Long balls, I wouldn't say he's sort of David De Gea style in terms of picking someone out with regards to that. But I mean, if needed, he has got a boot on him, so he can try and pass someone out. But to say that he'd start getting assists or sort of pre-assists and stuff, I think maybe is a bit too early.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of shows the time that we're in, isn't it? Like everyone cares about whether he's good with his feet.
Exactly. Yeah, he's nowhere near Edison level, but I think he's certainly 100% capable, or even ONANA level, like you say. But I feel he's certainly capable of building on that and improving that sort of exponentially, because he's got sort of the basics there. He just needs to adapt it to a better league and against better opposition on a more regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the Zerbi, that probably was a big game changer, wasn't it, in terms of his development? Would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, De Zerbi, very hands-on kind of manager. He loves putting the arm around the shoulder, sort of giving everyone that kind of what's it called, personal touch. And I feel that sort of helps has helped a lot of the players that he sort of coached at Shakhtar. When he brought in, obviously, the more sort of progressive build-up style, more focused on sort of attacking football and trying to build up from the back. Trubin, I mean, he was part of that from the very off, because it was evident that Katov was not ready to be involved in that. Trubin sort of very much the starting goalkeeper under him, and like we saw, even when sort of pressure is brought on against him, sort of in the Champions League, for example, the likes of those games against Inter in the Champions League, that when needed, he can, bring the other goalkeeping qualities that he's got in terms of, I guess, mentally stable on the pitch, in terms of quite calm, collected. He's not someone who's very out there in terms of sort of Emi Martinez style, outlandish, that's going to be going, full pelt crazy, like Jordan Pickford as well. Those types of goalkeepers. He likes to command his box quite well, relatively secure in that. And I feel that everything, especially with all of these players, not just Trubin, but other players in Ukraine that still haven't made that next step to like a top 5 league yet, is that, especially at this young age, that there's so much room for improvement and development, that as long as they get the right manager to help them, then that should set them on the right path. It's just that usually what happens is, well, previously in the past, a lot of Ukrainians ended up staying too long in the league, then they left, and it was sort of too late to actually build on anything, because you're already in your prime or past your prime, and that's that. And you can't really teach an old dog new tricks, per se.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And going on along with that, like a few questions here from Wayne, Hasman, Perisnich, Manish. Like, what's his? You've already kind of touched on. He's kind of a calm personality, but is he vocal? Like, as a goalkeeper, it's quite important to be vocal, command your defense, the box. How is he in terms of that?
Yeah, no, I think he is quite good at that, in terms of he commands his area very well. When there's corners and he's coming out for sort of aerial duels with punching and that kind of stuff, he's always sort of shouting and ensuring that happens. And that's something that you actually hear probably an awful lot more of in the matches that have been in sort of the UPL, because they've been played behind closed doors over the past year, because obviously due to the war. So you can hear a lot about what's going on the pitch and stuff. And yeah, he's quite loud, he's quite vocal, he's sort of chatting to his back line to ensure that they're sort of sorting exactly what they're doing. But like I mentioned, he's not some sort of overbearing person. Like, he's not going to be sort of like celebrating massive saves, like craziness. He's the shithousery aspect isn't there. I would say I don't know, I'd say he's just quite like he seems like quite an intellectual goalkeeper. He's rather smart. Like, I wouldn't say he's quiet, but he's sort of just sort of mid-level, like even off the pitch. Like, he's got good at responding to sort of questions that people ask him in the media, that kind of thing. Very good command of English, probably one of the best Ukrainian players that I've sort of spoken to with regards to English. So hopefully the fact that he's only learned that over the past couple of years or so would mean that if he moved to somewhere like Inter, for example, learning Italian wouldn't be much of a problem either, I don't think, because, you know, once you've got those sort of cognitive skills, that should be sort of in your wheelhouse. And in terms of sort of having a connection with his sort of centre backs at club level, I think that's relatively solid, because obviously he trains with them all the time. He knows them pretty well. Sort of when he receives passes and sort of asks for them and building up from the back, that kind of thing, and commanding his area, that they relatively know where he's going to be, and vice versa, in order for that to work out. Just because sometimes you see there have been a few occasions, for example, I think like Feyenoord in the Europa League, where Shakhtar lost 7-1. And I mean, people look at that, bloody hell, Trubin conceded 7 goals. But the reality of it was that literally it wasn't like bad goalkeeping. It was more or less like every shot that Feyenoord had went in. And I don't know what it is, that those games are relatively rare, but it's like, you know, when something's going in the top corner and just nothing goes your way. I only saw sort of 2 occasions of that this season. It was that game and in the under 21 Euro final, where the semi-final, where Trubin let in 5, but a few of them were from sort of defensive errors that ended up sort of meaning that he was sort of flat-footed, and then other ones were just outright bangers that went sort of top bins. But then you see other matches where he's pulling off sort of saves that you'd see the likes of Courtois only could pull off, in terms of sort of reflexes, sort of big hands, sort of those last minute leg blocks, that kind of stuff. He's really good at sort of adapting to the sort of scenarios that he's got coming towards him.
Yeah, I've seen some clips where he's pulling off, you know, even if it's getting deflected, he manages to somehow save it. So he's got those cat-like reflexes that you want to see in a goalkeeper. One weakness that some people mentioned in the comments as well, and then I also saw before, it's like his handling seems to be, maybe if there was one weakness to pick out, he doesn't even like claiming crosses. He seems to prefer to just punch it out rather than claim it. Would you say his handling would be, if you had to pick a weakness, is that the one you'd pick, or is there
I probably would, to be honest, because there are a few times where, you know, you see a shot that maybe be a bit of a long shot, not too dangerous or anything like that, comes to collect it with his hands, and it's sort of like takes a slight rebound and he ends up receiving anyway. But, you know, you probably would want that to be a bit more solid from him. But yeah, I would probably say, with regards to that's for sure. Like, even in that Euro under 21 Euro semi-final, there was an occasion where he possibly could have done a bit better with a ball that was slightly parried, that he couldn't get like enough of both of his hands to, and it ended up sort of resulting in a goal. So yeah, certainly something that I think he needs to work on. And also, for example, with regards to that handling, I think I saw a few Inter fans sort of replying to a very rare howler of his that he had in the UPL, which was like a massive long shot, and he sort of tried to come and sort of scoop it, and it sort of went below him, went behind him, and went in. So that's something that he certainly probably needs work on. I feel that a lot of it is probably to do with pressure, like we've been speaking about a lot, and sort of forwards that are going to be sort of breathing down his neck, or sort of ready to collect those rebounds, which I would say the UPL isn't too intense in that respect. And it's something that he certainly probably, with more experience, should hopefully improve in that. But, you know, you never know with these kind of things, because we've not seen anything else really, other than, you know, the odd Champions League game or national team match.
Yeah, but when I watch him in the Champions League, like I've only watched him against Inter. When I watched him against Real Madrid, he does seem to step up in those types of games.
Yeah, it was like that the last season against Real Madrid, where Shakhtar were about to win against Real Madrid. It was 1-0, and then, like you say, in that sort of handling, I don't know whether it's handling, maybe it's still like he still can work on his decision making with regards to he came out to punch across, which he probably could have just stayed on his line for. And I'm not sure if you remember, I'm sure maybe some people might who are watching, listening, when he clashed heads with Rudiger, and it was like that sort of like really bad sort of head injury for both of them. But Rudiger ended up getting his head on it first and ended up going in. So that is something that's another thing that I feel that he can work on with regards to sort of weaknesses, decision making. I think he can still probably wise up on that, and maybe, you know, a more experienced goalkeeping coach or something can sort of tell him, listen, don't come for those crosses, just stay calm, just, you don't need to be a hero all the time, and you know, you can sort it, because on the most part he is relatively collected, but you know, you see those slight lapses in concentration, for example 95th minute, when you don't really need to do that. And you know, I would call that or take that down to sort of his young age so far.
Yeah, he's so young for a keeper. I mean, keepers peak much later than outfield players. So yeah, you expect. And I mean, you can make a compilation about any player. Like I don't know if you've seen it recently. There was a Man United fans made a compilation about Onana's mistakes. It's like somehow they made him look bad in the video.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's really, and I think it's the easiest to do it for a goalkeeper, because you know, if you concede something and there's like even a foot wrong, then you're going to get criticised for it. But on the whole, like I said, there are a few mistakes in, but to say that they're detrimental or something, a characteristic of his game, certainly not. I mean, it's just like any other keeper, and it's something that he can certainly improve on.
Yeah, I mean, he's got already like 20 plus Champions League games under his belt, Europa League under his belt. Like, you know, he's already, even though he's, you know, young, he's already got quite a bit of experience under his belt.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel that he can only improve going forward with that, especially with the fact that wherever he goes, probably Inter, as it's looking at the moment with regards to everything that we're hearing, you know, across the media aspect. And to be honest, with regards to it obviously being his last year of his contract, I guess Inter could get a bit of a bargain for him. You know, if they end up getting him for 15 under 20 million euros, then I think that's a big coup, because I think you're going to mention something about Cerna, and
I mean, the quote is on there on the screen for people if you're listening. Dario Serna was the sporting director for Shakhtar, said he's one of the best in Europe, ready for a big deal, but only for a top price, even though, as Andrew mentioned, he's on his final year of his contract. So what is the realistic, you reckon, price for him? Because Shakhtar are not an easy team to negotiate with usually.
No, yeah, that's the big problem with Shakhtar, or per se for any other club that wants to talk to them, because they're probably one of the best negotiators in European football, to be honest.
Arsenal will know.
As Arsenal will know, as you know, even United when they bought Fred for 50+ million, etc. They know how to drive a hard bargain. However, I feel that this time round, I guess Inter or any other club that wants Trubin have got a slight upper hand in the fact that Trubin has got 1 year left on his contract. It doesn't look like, or I don't think there's been any signs from the media and sort of what his player agency has been saying, his representatives have been saying, to Italian media, to Ukrainian media, it doesn't seem like he would be ready to sign a contract extension or anything like that. So I feel that in the end, somewhere around 20 million euro mark, maybe at the higher end of that, in terms of, it could go lower, but I'm saying that around that would be where Shakhtar end up maybe end up negotiating down towards if there's going to be some sort of negotiation
Mm.
going on, because I'm sure that we've seen the rumours that they want 40 million euros, and for someone on 1 year left on his contract, I think Inter certainly won't be paying for that, regardless of how much they get for ONANA. And unless they find someone else like Chelsea who are who are willing to just go, fine, we'll throw at you, then maybe. But I mean, with regards to this is completely different to the Madrid deal, because Madrid had like 5 years left on his contract, or 3 or something, when he was at Shakhtar. So they had a lot more, I guess, power and sway on where he ended up going, whether he was leaving or not. But here, I think that Trubin, it's more in his hands. And with regards to what we saw as well, his intermediary, was his name Klanya, he was going, obviously, being in the Inter offices and stuff. It seems like there is certainly something in this, and for whatever reason, I'm not convinced it's going to be resolved too quickly. Just knowing Shakhtar, but if it is going to be, but wherever he ends up going, I think it will be by the end of this summer for certain. Is when that will be resolved.
Yeah, I mean, from his side, this guy today as well. He did it yesterday after Fabrizio Romano tweeted. He's doing the side-eye post. He did it yesterday, did it today. So this guy seems like he's all on board the Inter train at the moment.
Yeah, Shakhtar players, they know how to use Instagram to their I guess to their transfer sort of futures, and how to utilize that. So I guess we'll see. He's certainly up for it by the looks of things, and I'm sure that he's ready for that move.
And that must hint. I mean, that's kind of quite a big hint in terms of doing stuff like that. There must be some.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
Romano claims that the personal terms are all agreed, so it's just between the clubs now.
Exactly, and I feel that was always going to be the hard part anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
We'll see how that ends up going.
Yeah. Going back to the Zerbi thing, I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about the Zerbi. So our director Piero Ausilio and the Zerbi were recently towards the end of June seen in Milan dining. If you want to know, it was a Japanese restaurant, apparently, if you're interested in that. In the popular area of Washington area. I didn't even know there was a Washington area in Milan. So the rumors initially were, they're talking about, maybe some Inter players or maybe some Brighton players, or Inter trying to tap up the Zerbi or something. But I think now it's quite clear that probably Ausilio was asking the Zerbi about, basically doing what I'm doing with you. It's like, give me the lowdown on this boy. As far as I'm aware, the intermediary that is doing the talks for on behalf of Trubin with Inter is De Zerbi's agent. So I think, or something, or very close to De Zerbi in terms of representation. So on behalf of sort of Trubin's Ukrainian agency part. So I think there must be some sort of connection going on there with regards to all of that. So I'm pretty sure, just listening to that, the fact that they were asking for the recommendation of what De Zerbi of De Zerbi on, how good Trubin is. I'm sure that certainly played a role. Yeah, I think it is, because there was rumors that Shakhtar are interested in. Brighton might be interested in Aslani, who's one of our young players. But I think it's pretty clear now that it probably was about Trubin. But one question before we close off, one question that was asked a couple of times as well by people on Twitter was, if you had to compare him in terms of playing style to a goalkeeper, who would you compare him to? Because some people have thrown out kind of like the Courtois out there, which I do kind of see Courtois.
I see it too. I think it's that's sort of the easy one that you can probably compare him to in terms of physical stature. He's quite big. He's got similar sort of shot stopping ability, saves, in terms of some of the things that we've seen from him. Yeah. But then again, Courtois probably isn't that handy with his feet, compared to the likes of maybe even Ter Stegen, or someone similar, or even like a Neuer. But I think if I had to say that he was like someone, I would probably, I'd probably have to compare him to someone. Yeah, I'd probably say more similar to Stegen, maybe in terms of just all round ability. Like I was thinking of Donnarumma, but similarly, he's more of like that Courtois style, but like
He's not good on the ball at all, Donnarumma.
Exactly. So yeah, let's go for Ter Stegen. Sort of
Nice.
all around comparison.
Yeah. Okay, that's quite good. That's a good sign for sure. I'm sure Interisti would be happy to hear that. That's a very good comparison point. But yeah, Andrew, I think that's it. I think we've covered pretty much everything there in terms of Trubin. Ball playing ability, what his weaknesses are, his strengths are. We know he's a really good shot stopper. We already knew that, so we've covered off a few other things. Oh, yeah, actually, one thing I didn't ask you. We mentioned in terms of his handling. What's he like in terms of coming out of his 6-yard area? Is he willing to do that, or is he kind of guy that kind of likes to stay in his box?
No, as I mentioned, he loves doing that. I feel that maybe he might need a bit of coaching just to sort of wind that in a bit more, just to sort of maybe make the correct decisions when to do that and when not to. But when needed, I mean, he can play out with try and get those leg blocks in and sort of big hands whenever needed. And if that's beyond sort of the 6-yard box or even the penalty spot per se, he can do that. I mean, he's had a few penalty shootouts as well, and he's not fended too bad in those either, especially against Rennes in the Europa League last year. So that's another plus. Yeah,
I saw a few nice penalty saves, which is that's always a plus as well with the goalkeeper. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that scout report. You've definitely you've convinced me. I mean, I was already on the Trubin train. But yeah, if we are able to secure him for what the Italian reports are saying, 10 to 15 million, that would be amazing. But yeah, as you said, it's going to be probably a long negotiation with Shakhtar, so we'll see how it goes. And thank you very much, Andrew, for coming on. Please plug away anything that you want to advertise.
Yeah, sure. If anyone wants to know a bit more about Ukrainian football, about Trubin, I mean, I'll be following him obviously on his sort of international breaks and all that kind of stuff. If he is to sign for Inter and you want to sort of keep up with that. And I mean, there's plenty of other sort of top Ukrainian talents coming out. They made the under-21 Euro final semi-finals recently. There's like Sudakov, who still plays for Shakhtar, and Bondarenko, and plenty of others that I think, in the future could be getting some moves to Serie A or beyond. So let's see what that happens. And if you want to find out all about that, at Zorya Londonsk on Twitter, Threads, if you're using that, and also the podcast. It's called Ukraine Plus Football, and you can find it on any good podcast provider. We sort of release an episode every 2 weeks or so. So and it's all in English. So join that if you fancy.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone that tuned in, and thank you everyone that put their questions up on the Twitter as well. Really, really appreciate it. And you guys that are watching, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check out Zorya Londonsk. See you on the next one, and let's see if Trubin will become Inter's next goalkeeper. Ciao ragazzi, Forza Inter.